Hello, I'm Morgan and this is Azonojoy Reviews. This review will not contain any spoilers. All the footage used will be from the first two hideouts only, fighting regular enemies. No story elements or boss fights will be shown. If you want to fully avoid spoilers by not seeing the first two hideouts at all, then just listening to the video will be completely fine, as nothing that's shown on the screen is important for the review to make sense. Let's get into it by ripping off the band-aid and covering the negatives first. The stuttering. While playing, I faced stuttering a few times when loading into new zones or going through doors. It could get bad at times, to the point where my camera snapped a completely different direction. It was the most notable in the first couple of hideouts. It seemed to calm down later in the game. While the stuttering was somewhat annoying at times, I never experienced it in combat or otherwise. It only really happened when I went into new areas, which isn't too bad. The story length. Unfortunately, the length of the story leaves a bit more to be desired. The story starts in an interesting way and it does get wrapped up nicely. However, I finished it in just over 6 hours. With how fun and unique this world felt, I would have loved the story to be a little bit longer to give the narrative more room to breathe. That being said, I did very much enjoy those 6 hours, and the game does offer replayability, both in terms of an arena mode, and after finishing the story you unlock modifiers you can activate and goals that you can work towards. Sifu is one of those games where the story isn't everything, it's just part of the whole package, so if you usually only care about stories in games, just keep that in mind. Somewhat repetitive combat. While the combat is very fun, it can feel repetitive at times. Enemies don't have a big variety of attacks to use, and most attacks can be blocked or parried, with the exception of a couple. Enemies later in the game mostly use the same moves as the one at the start of the game, so you'll be dealing with the same attacks throughout the game, albeit at a higher difficulty in the later stages. The repetitiveness is somewhat offset by the ability to unlock different moves and occasionally acquiring weapons or dealing with enemies that have weapons. I will say the combat is fun and I'll cover it more in the pros section. Speaking of, we'll move over to the positives. The artistic style or aesthetic of the game. The Sifu is a really good looking game. It hits a great balance between being realistic but having a stylistic flair that enhances the visuals. Sometimes it'll almost feel like a cartoon with the art style and action, but it never strays too far away from being realistic. All the characters are regular humans, so you don't face any people with like 4 arms or weird features that would pull you out of the game. The environments all have a very strong foundation in that classic Chinese aesthetic that sets the tone for the world in its entirety, but also there are some zones that push the boundaries by going into almost a sci-fi direction. That being said, I personally really like these unrealistic areas since it felt very well balanced and it never took the spotlight from the primary aesthetic of the game. The combat. I know I said the combat was somewhat repetitive earlier, but there are a lot of things to compliment about the combat too. The core of the game is fighting, and the fighting is very satisfying. The animations are snappy and the impacts feel good, and I never experienced the combat being unfair in any way. If I got beat up or lost fights, it was because I messed up, not because the game did something unfair to me. Even when fighting groups of 10 enemies, it's designed in a way where you can always react and deal with engagers, because of the combat and animations being fast and smooth enough to allow for that. You have 4 ways to deal with combat, which are blocking, parrying, evading and dodging. The dodge I mostly use for repositioning. Blocking, parrying and evading are the actions you'll use the most, and they all felt relevant and useful at varying points in combat. You'll get access to a few different skills that will give you new attacks to use. These give some variety to how you approach fights. The music. The music is very well made in this game. Most of the time it'll be a nice complementary background noise to you exploring hideouts and fighting enemies, and sometimes it'll ramp up and act as an additional element to make fights even more intense. None of the soundtracks stood out as not being suitable for the setting of the game, even with how different some hideouts can be from each other. The aging mechanic. I'm a sucker for unique mechanics in games. The only thing I knew about Sifu before playing it was that the age was relevant for the gameplay, though I didn't know to what extent. When first starting, I was worried that it would become tedious after a while, feeling like an extra unnecessary thing tacked onto the game just for the sake of being unique. However, it never got annoying. In fact, it's designed quite well. Every time you die, you'll increase your age, and when you get too old, you'll fail the hideout you're in. When you finish a hideout and start the next one, the age you are when you enter is kind of like your checkpoint age in a way. For example, if you finish the second hideout at age 40 and go to the third one, but you end up failing it, then you can still enter the third hideout at age 40. This gives the game a very natural progression. Your first attempts, you might not get too far before you die of old age, but you'll have improved a lot. So you can revisit the older levels and get a much better performance, leaving you in a good position for the later levels too. Also, you can find keys to unlock shortcuts in the hideouts, allowing you to skip big parts of the levels and potentially saving yourself some years. The aging mechanic ties into skills and ability unlocks, as some things will be unavailable if you're too old. It gives a nice incentive to redo older levels so you can grab some of those skills and abilities that are only unlockable when you're young. Honorary mention the replay editor. I have to give them a bonus point for including a replay editor. In a game with this much action in it, being able to record and edit together cool sequences really works well. Some of the background footage in this video was created through the replay editor. It allows you to view your fights from different angles, refly the camera, and edit it so you have a variety of camera angles for your combat. You can even roll the camera or adjust lens and composition settings. I can definitely see someone that's good at editing be able to put together something that looks epic. All in all, Sifu is a really good game. The fighting is very fun and the world building kept me intrigued throughout the entire story. The story itself isn't the most groundbreaking ever, but it does what it needs to do. It sets up the game to shine for itself. Giving the player incentives to replay levels is nice, especially if they want to take on a challenge through modifiers or dive into the arena. Taking all of this into consideration, I'll give Sifu a rating of 8.1. If you enjoy fighting games, I would highly recommend it as the combat is great. But if you mostly enjoy games for the story, then you might want to look elsewhere. Thank you for listening to my review of Sifu. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like, and if you want to keep updated when I upload, you can subscribe and hit the bell. See you in the next one.